What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on a 2015 BMW F82 M4. On the F82 today, we are going to be covering how to replace your front control arms. We have a couple options available on fcpo.com. We have the OE style arms as well as an SPL upgrade. We have both the tension strut and the lower control arm. The tension strut is not only going to give you better feel, eliminating rubber bushings on the interior, just like the factory arm used to have, but it's also going to help adjust caster and bump steer correction. With the lower control arm, you're going to be able to get proper roll center, adjust the camber, and as well as adjusting your track width. So really, the limits are limitless, endless with the SPL units. So we'll show you how to install those. The only difference between the two is that the SPL arms do not need to be tightened at right height. If you've seen any of our BMW DIYs, or any control arm DIY for that matter, we can show you how to achieve ride height before you tighten all the hardware down. We'll still touch on it during this DIY, but it's really just one arm that's affected by it, even if you're doing the OE style arms. With that, we also have new hardware for the front end. But before we get started on that, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this job, we have a couple tools here. A lot of them are doubles, but what we're going to be using is a 1/2-inch ratchet and torque wrench. We also have a 12mm wrench. The 12mm is only needed if you're installing the SPL arms. We'll show you as we go through it. Otherwise, if you're just doing the OE arms, do not worry about it. We have two different 18s and two different 21s. One are ratcheting, ones are not. To counter hold, we have a T40, and then we also have a 4.5mm hex bit. This is, again, only for the SPL arms. Otherwise, don't worry about the 4.5mm hex bit. We have a 17, an 8mm, and an 18mm socket. We have an 18 for the 1/2-inch as well as the 3/8 electric ratchet. For the SPL arms only, we have a 24mm socket. I have both a deep and a shallow socket. We're going to need a 10mm wrench and socket for the headlight level sensor on the driver's side. For the SPL arms, we're going to be using some needle nose pliers to install it. Once more, I have some torque seal, an electric impact wrench, and depending on whether you're doing this job in the driveway, on the garage floor, or on the lift like us, you're going to need either a screw jack or a free floor jack to set the vehicle at ride height if you are installing the OE tension strut. If you're doing the SPL units like we are today, not something you have to worry about. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. Today we're going to be focusing on the front right of the M4. However, we will cover the headlight level sensor rod on the driver's side once we're getting to that point in the DIY. We're going to start by removing 5 17mm lug bolts. All right, with our wheel off, this is going to give us more room to work with. We're going to raise the car up a little bit more. We have some plastic belly pan material, if you will, some plastic shielding to get out of the way with a couple of 8mm bolts. So let's get to that now. We have a total of 9 8mm bolts to remove, 7 for this bottom piece and 2 for the ones that surround the tie rod. That's going to give us more access to getting the hardware out for the rear lower control arm. So for this one, we're going to pull out the forward piece. This one's a little bit easier to work with. Just kind of yank this out from either the top or the bottom, whichever spot gives you a little bit more room to work with. For the other side, we really just have to flip it over like so, and now we have access to this. For the front control arm, we have to remove the front portion of our fender liner. So what I have you here, we'll zap out these 3 8mm bolts and then work our way up for the front half. All right, let's get a little bit more eye level with the car and we'll get the rest of it out. We have a couple more 8mm to remove. We have 2 at the top, 1 here in the center, 1 by the fender, and then we have 1 on the interior. We're missing a couple. We only have 3 left up here, so we'll be replacing these as we go through the car. And then we would have 1 more on the interior kind of in front of the soft line. So we'll be sure to get those back in there when this goes back together. For now, that's going to free up the front half of the fender liner. So we'll pull this baby out. Right. This is going to give us access to the low temp circuit cooler, which we have to just move out of our way. And to get to that, we'll need a T30, and then it'll be free. T30 right up top. Pull that baby out. And that is going to free up our cooler just enough so that we can get it out of our way. We're just going to pull it forward and up. And now having that angle is going to give us room to get to the head of this bolt. So with that, let's get a little better position going for us here, and then we'll start loosening up some control arm hardware. We're going to start with the tension strut first, 21mm nut. We're going to go ahead and break that free first before we worry about counter holding anything. All right, because this one is going down into the spindle here, I'm not worried about it falling on us, and it comes out nice and loose. All right, we have a 18mm head over here that we're gonna go in with our 1/2" ratchet and 18mm socket. Here comes out our old bolt. Here comes out our old tension strut. And now we're going to hang on to this for 1 second. We're going to use it to set the length on our new one. And then we'll pick it back up. Again, we're doing the SPL. If you are just doing the OE replacement, then you can skip ahead, but just hang out for a second. We're going to pop out the old nut. Just pull it out towards you. It keys in to the hole on the subframe, and you can just slide it down and over. If you need to, you can always use a flathead to really get it going, but usually they come out. And then the new one, you'll see it has the 2 little tabs. Those literally just help guide it in there. So we'll kind of do the reverse. We'll get this one started. And then it's like, that's it, slid in, clipped in, good to go. Okay, now to the workbench. So right now, we are going to set the tension strut to just the factory length. Once you get the car at your alignment rack or you send it up for the track, you can go ahead and adjust it as you like. But just to get us to the alignment shop, we're going to keep everything kind of factory specs for now. So what I like to do is I keep the old bolt and just run it through the inside of the control arm. And then what we're looking to set here is just the length of it. So where the ball joint is going to sit in relation to the old one. So right now this one is still a bit shorter than what we need. So we're just going to loosen it up a little bit. We took our 4.5mm Allen. I'm just going to undo both ends evenly so that they are even. So we'll just give it a couple turns. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want it close so that the car tracks semi-straight while you go get it aligned. All right, I'm happy with that length. Again, it's not gonna be perfect. We'll have to adjust it when we're aligning the car. But for now, we're gonna keep these 2 ends free just so that we can get the ball joint end to fit in on the spindle how we want it, and then we can snug these up. For this side of things, we have 2, on the SPL arms, we have 2 nylon locking nuts. The order for the tension strut is gonna be pretty simple. You have your bottom locking nut. You have 2 washers. These are going to ride underneath the tapered seat. Then you have 1 more washer here on the end. This one's going to ride underneath the top locking nut once we get it in the spindle. So these can come off for now. And then we'll just feed this in. Again, 2 washers underneath the tapered seat side of things. Get this baby in. We're going to grab our 12mm wrench. So set that there like so. We're going to grab our 24mm socket. And we're just going to snug this up as best as we can. That's going to be good to rock and roll there. we'll keep this off for now. Now we can go back to the car. We have our new bolts. We already installed the new locking nut, if you will, on the inside of the subframe. Let's go feed this in. We'll drop this in to our spindle, and then we'll adjust as need. Once everything's snugged up, we can tighten these up at the end. We're gonna feed in our tension strut, kind of just guiding it gently into the spindle and feeding it up into our subframe. New bolts can go in. And so right now what I'm running into is my tension strut is still a little short, so my eyeball adjustment is off. So I'm just gonna twist it to get that inside to go in a little bit more into the subframe until I can get my bolts in. So that's the one really nice thing about these SPLs is they're super easy to adjust. So if your eyeball adjustments on the table don't work, you can always just do it literally live while it's on the car. I was gonna snug it up using the electric ratchet. Now, one thing to note, we'll stop right here. Because these are spherical bushings, we don't have to set the car at right height. Two things you can do. One, see any other DIY where we've done BMW control arms, where we talk about it a little bit more in depth. But before you jack up the car, the easiest thing to do is measure from the center of your wheel to the bottom of your fender. You can use a piece of painter's tape, set the painter's tape, and then just pull it off the wheel and tape it off to the side. That can be your measuring tape, if you will. The other thing is if we were doing this right now on the lift, we would have a screw jack and literally just lift up the whole suspension with both arms installed, of course, until we start getting weight off of the jack pad. If you're on the ground, you can do that with a floor jack. So that's why you need a free floor jack. So that's really only gonna apply to the OE front tension strut. The rear lower control arm is a mono ball, so that one can be tightened at any height. So if you're just doing the rear one, no problem. If you're just doing the front one, which really you should do both at the same time, then set it to ride height. So pretty straightforward. Again, we're kind of glossing over it on this car. Check out any of the other BMW control arm DIYs where we focus on it a little bit more. Before I snug this up all the way, I want to make sure that my ball joint is sitting in my spindle properly. And then I'm just going to get my nut and washer started. So I have my washer and my nut. We'll leave that there. Okay. Now that I know those are good, I am going to finish tightening up the interior 18. Torque spec for the interior tension strut 18mm bolt is 100 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. And then for the 90, if you have a angle mode on your torque wrench, you can use that. What I like to do is just mark the bolt on one side. So I'm gonna mark it right here, closer to me. And then just keep tightening it until that makes a quarter turn, and that's gonna be our 90 degrees. All right, with the inner bolt done, you can go ahead and resecure your oil cooler, or auxiliary radiator, I mean. For us, we're gonna go ahead and now tighten down the ball joint side of things. So let's do that next. So for the factory tension strut, the torque spec is 175 Newton meters. You're gonna want to hold, get your 21mm wrench once more and just snug that up while you counter hold with your T40. Obviously the SPLs have a different setup, so we won't be doing that. But once you get it nice and snug, then you can switch over to a 21mm socket on your torque wrench and give them the final snug down. For us, we're gonna need a 24mm socket still to tighten down the end of our SPL arm. And we shouldn't have to counter hold anything. The top is already sandwiched on this side of things, so that should hold us close. And then we can just snug this up with the ratchet, and then these get torqued down to 180 foot-pounds, or 244 Newton meters. Now that that's tightened down, we can hit it with the insurance plan. Now we're gonna pop our cooler back in place. There's two little alignment dowels at the bottom that go into the green grommets. Right underneath that hose, you can see them. So just line those two up, push it down, slide it back into place, get your T30 once more, and then just snug it up with the electric ratchet. All right, I'm gonna throw the front fender liner back on just while we have the lights and camera set up here now. You don't have to do it at this very moment, but we're pretty much done in this area. So we're gonna throw her back in. All right, now let's get back up in the air and we can continue on with the lower control arm. It's worth noting to also snug up the top locking nut, the one that was on the bottom side, if you will, of the ball joint or tapered side of things. This is the one that we tightened up at the table. So same thing, 180 foot-pounds for that one as well. There we go. It wasn't really far off from what we got on the table, but it doesn't hurt to just double check it and make sure it's good to go. For the lower control arm, we're gonna start by breaking free the 21mm nut. Now let's move to the two 18s on the inboard side of the subframe. Kind of holding the 18 on one side with another 18 on the other side. One thing you can do when you're assembling these type of control arms is if you're worried about corrosion or the inside of the bolt seizing to the inside of the sleeve on the ball joint, as you install them, you can always add a little bit of paste on the shank, on the non-threaded portion. So whether it's some liquid moly ceramic paste or anti-seize, and then feed it through. You don't want it on the threads, but it's not a bad thing to have it on the shaft that sits inside of the bushing. I'm gonna turn the wheel a little bit more left just to see if we can clear that last bit of the tie rod boot that's kind of in our way. Going full lock left gives us the room we need to get that baby out. Now that can come down. This can be removed the rest of the way. And now same thing as we did with the tension strut, we're gonna use this old arm to set up our new one. For the lower control arm, we're just gonna set it to factory specs for now. Again, you can always adjust this later on. As you pull out the spherical bushing end or thread it out to lengthen this, you wanna make sure that you don't exceed more than 5/8 of threads being exposed on just one side of things. So meaning, if this turns out, I'll just show you. When we loosen this, we start threading this out. If we have more than 5/8 threads exposed on this end, it's gonna weaken the arm. So you wanna keep it even between this side and the larger threaded portion on the arm. So you can loosen these two up as well and thread this portion out as well if you need it. Obviously, we'll probably need a wrench for this one. This one's much tighter. Yeah. So you can unthread both out, just keep the threads under 5/8 as far as how much you're exposing on them. So similar to how we did with the other arm, for the tension strut, we're gonna adjust this to the same length as the OE arm for now. We're gonna just throw it. I'm using the bolts from the tension strut since it's nice and long. And we are actually pretty close. I'm gonna bring this in just a little bit. All right, I'm kind of happy with that. Again, we can always go back and change this as we need it. I'm just gonna snug these down for now. The torque spec on these are 150 inch-pounds. If you were gonna torque down these little clamps, that's gonna be there. We're gonna go with the maximum correction setup. So that's gonna be the two larger washers here at the bottom of our taper joint. Feed that into our spherical and get the two smaller bushings, or two smaller washers down at the bottom. We'll get those started. Again, we'll hook it up with the 12 mil. Get that baby in there. Grab our 24 mil and just snug it up as best as we can here on the table. At this point, our arm is assembled enough. Again, these are still loose. We can adjust them while it's in the car. But with that, let's head over to the car now and feed them in. We're gonna feed our spherical end into the subframe first. Throw our new bolt through just to hold everything in place. Then we can come up here and feed in the ball joint side of things. We may need to adjust that a little bit. Get our washer and lock nut started up top. And don't forget, again, on the driver's side, you do have the headlight level sensor. Now let's tighten up this ball joint end. We're gonna snug it up first using the deep 24 and ratchet. So for this one, it looks like I'm gonna have to kind of hold on the bottom. Usually, it really depends. This is the first one out of all the ones that we've installed that is spinning on the opposite side. So we're just gonna use another ratchet with a 24. You can also use a wrench with a 24 mil. Just needed a little bit of support. Now we're gonna torque down again. Factory ball joint spec, 175 Newton meters. For the SPLs, it's 180 foot-pounds or 244 Newton meters. Now let's tighten the inner 18s. Right, we're gonna get our nut on there. We have a new locking nut as well. Again, these are all linked in the video description. We always want to replace both of these since there's a torque to yield setup. Then we'll grab our torque wrench, set it to 100 Newton meters. Then we'll mark the head of our bolt, turn it another quarter turn. And now this piece can come back over. We can get our other half, get those two 8 mils back in, and then the bottom piece. And then we just have to put a wheel back on. Well, we're gonna have to replace a lot of these plastic pieces, and the reality is the best way to avoid snapping this one like I did is take your time with it. Also, not having the stiffening plate in the way would help. However, you have to remember that these bolts are all one-time use. So if you choose patience and finagling over replacing hardware, you can do that. With our paneling situated once more, we are ready to just get our wheel back on. So let's get a little bit more eye level. We'll throw her on, put her on the ground, and torque it up. We're gonna get our wheel back on here, back in place. Get a couple lug bolts started. All right, now we can get the car back on the ground and give them their final torque. We're gonna torque in a crisscross pattern to 140 Newton meters. And that is gonna conclude it for today, my good people. From here, you're gonna head over to the alignment shop, get your car set up, and be ready to hit the road. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, please leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this video and you want to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new DIYs all the time. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the build and why this car looks the way it does, be sure to head over to the FCP Euro Media channel and subscribe there to see more. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.